Hey everyone, I'm Allison.
And I'm Bryce, and we're Better Half Reviews.
And today we are talking about Valknut. It's designed by Brueh, and the art is also by him as well, from Brueh Games.
Valknut is a game with factions that have asymmetrical powers, and they're all fighting to be the champions of Midgard.
Alright, so let's take a look. Alright, so this is a setup of a 2-player game. There are also cards to set up for 3- and 4-player games. At the beginning of the game, you need to choose one of the factions to be and choose out your matching tokens. So we have these skeleton guys and the elves here. So you'll notice that different factions have different amount of people. So depending on their strengths and their abilities, they're going to have different amounts. So there's lots of these guys available, so they're not as strong, but the elves have less pieces, but they may have a little bit more strength, so they can attack people from further away. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. When you start the game, you have one of these cards randomly laid out, and this just helps you give your parlay space. It's where you start your people. So you place it down on the board, and the first player will put some of their tokens on this side, second player will put some of their tokens on this side. You can choose to put as few as 1 or as many as 4. So once players have set out their tokens, you can begin the game. So before we talk about some of the other logistics of the game, let's talk about the cards. So you're going to be moving on and off of these cards, and there's different terrain available. So this grassland is something that you can freely move on. However, there's other terrain like water and mountains and forest that you can't traverse unless you have special powers that let you do that. So for the most part, you're traveling on the grasslands. So the player who has the least number of maximum units is the one who goes first. So to go first, you draw one of the 3 terrain tiles that are available. So I'll draw this one, and you have to place it somewhere so it matches along the entire side of a card. So you can't put it like this. It has to go either directly to the side or on top or below. So I'll place it here. And anytime you place a card that has the Valknut symbol, that means you can place another of your tiles. However, if you don't have one available, you get 1 extra move for your turn. So the number of moves that you get is based on the card that you play. So this has a number 1. I would get 1 movement. But however, since I didn't have any tiles left to place another elf on there, I could have 2 movement. So movement is orthogonal, up, down, left, and right. You can move as far over or whatever you want as long as you don't run into terrain. So I can move all the way over to the edge of the map if I wanted to. And then for my other move, I can move up. And then my turn would be done, and then we flip over another card to refresh, and the skeletons gets a turn. They pick a card. They'll pick this one. It has a 3 on it, so they're going to have 3 movement. So they have 3 movement. They could choose to move one person multiple times or move multiple people all the way up to number 3. So they could go 1 for over, 2, and 3. Doing this movement allows you to defeat an enemy. So that's what you want to do in the game. You want to be the last one standing. And you need to pin your opponent either between 2 of your own or between yourself and a terrain you can't traverse. So in this instance, I trapped the elf between 2 of the skeletons, so the elf is defeated and removed.
Alternatively, had I moved this person here, the elf would be trapped between a terrain tile and my player. The elf would be removed. Here, in this situation where the elf has nothing on the other side, it won't be removed from the game. However, if I pick up a card and place it where there's a terrain tile blocking their movement, that elf could potentially be removed from the board at that time.
So say you get to a point where all of the cards that are face up aren't really any good for you. Your character card is actually a terrain card, and it usually plays towards your strengths. So this one has extra movement and a Valknut available. So what you can do is flip over this card and place it and discard one of the options up here. If you get to the point of the game where you're able to remove the player's last unit from the board you win the game. Or if you run out of terrain tiles to choose from, whoever has the most collective number on the board is the winner. So say you get to the end of the game and there are no more cards to draw, it's all filled out. Now you're going to add up the total of each units available for each team. So the elves are worth 4 each and the skeletons are worth 2 each. However, any units that are left on this middle board, the parley board, are not counted for points. So these are not worth anything. Now you count up your total. So the elves have 1 pawn worth 4, and the skeletons have 2, 4, 6 total points. So the skeletons would win this match.
So if it happened to be a tie at the end of the game where the elves have 4, the skeletons have 4, the faction with the most maximum units would be the winner. So here it would be the skeletons.
All right, so that's how you play the game. Let's talk about how we feel about it. Bryce, what are some of the pros?
So as you can tell, this game is very easy and simple to learn. However, there's a lot of strategy in it.
Just a bit.
It's, really hard, especially at first, to understand like what's the best thing to do, where to go, how to move your pieces. So if you have, an experienced player playing a non-experienced player, the experienced player is probably gonna win. But I don't know. I like the strategy in it.
The thing I like about it with the strategy is that there's so many different factions that you can play, and so you have some different strengths that you can try to utilize. But also, if there's those factions that seem like super powerful, they have less units than others. So that makes it even more interesting too, where, like the goblins just go everywhere and you're like, ah! But then there's others where like there's that one, I forget what it's called, like the golem or something, it has 1 token. And so that just like boggles my mind of like all the different types of strategies you can go for.
But that faction was just 1 token, 2 spaces wide, so it's really hard to kill. So I don't know. It's really interesting how you could have maybe a few fighters, but your fighters are really good with their abilities, or you could have tons of people on the board and maybe not as good of an ability as others.
Yeah, so it's definitely really intriguing with the strategy. And I love the look of this game. The art is just really cool and clear, and it's just fun.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I like about the game is the replayability of it with all the factions like we've been talking about. They all have different strategies you can employ, so every game is different and new depending on what factions people choose to play with.
And also how the cards lay out. So depending on the player count, you're playing with certain cards, and you're shuffling them up, and you never know what's going to come out. So yeah, every game is very different.
And then there's even the Ragnarok mode, which is like a 2-player variant where you can each control 2 factions at a time, which honestly is my favorite way to play 2 players. But it does add more variability to like a 2-player game.
Mm-hmm. And there's also like the Gods and Monsters way of playing. There's several different variations you can play, and I like that about this game. So like it's a small box game, but it packs a lot of stuff in it. So are there any cons?
Well, for me, one of the biggest cons is kind of the standard 2-player game. Right now when it's hard to meet with, gaming groups and stuff, we're playing a lot of just 2-player games. And the 2-player games just felt really quick to me before I could really like set up a lot of strategy that I wanted to use. But they do have that Ragnarok mode, which made it a lot better in my opinion.
Yeah, for us, it's like, you play the 2-player mode to kind of get the game, and then we move straight into Ragnarok, and I don't think we'll go back to just playing like 1 faction each. It's definitely more interesting when you're playing 2 factions at a lower player count. Makes things kind of crazy.
And it's really fun, especially in the Ragnarok mode, to have the 2 different abilities. So you're like, okay, these people can do this, and this one can do that. And just trying to find those different combinations that work well together is a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's times when we were playing it where it felt like really chess-like, because you're trying to be very strategic in how you move up and over, but you don't want to leave yourself vulnerable. So there's one time we got to like down to the wire, and it looked like Bryce was going to win, and it's just like I just sat there looking at it. I was like, no, I can't do that. Can't move that way. I've got to make sure. there's one way I can win.
Literally one move she could make to win the game, and she found it.
But yeah, so it's just really crazy, like how you're thinking, and you're watching the other person. It's like maybe they won't notice. Don't go there. Yes, go there. But yeah, it's just really fun, and you'd think it wouldn't be too much of an interactive game, but you get like really into it, and you're like, no.
Yeah, especially when you're like starting to lose a lot of pieces, and you're like, oh no, if I lose any more pieces, I'm gonna lose the game. And you're like starting to sweat, and you're like, I need that card to come up so I can put more pieces on the board. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, so overall, I think this is a fantastic game, and I love that it feels like such a big game in a tiny little box. So it doesn't feel like an overwhelming thing to be like, oh, okay, let's get out this big strategy game. It's like, here, let's get out this strategy. Oh, we're already set up. Cool, let's play. And then you play.
So I also recommend this game. Like Allison said, the setup's really quick, really easy to get into a game. The games are fast, so even if you lose really quickly, like I have sometimes, um, you can always have a chance at redemption. You'll play several games over the course of however long you want to. I enjoy it a lot.
So this is the second game that we've played by Louis Brueh, and so far he's 2 for 2. We've really enjoyed Night Parade and now Valknut. So keep making games, Louis, because we'll check them out. All right, so that's all we have to say about this game. I'm Allison.
And I'm Bryce, and we're
Better
Better
Half
Half Reviews.
Happy gaming!
Have fun.